Welcome to the Symphony podcast. If you're new to the show, it's where we break down one important topic each week in under 30 minutes, usually under 30 minutes. And today we have the one and only Alexa Berg in the house. Alex, welcome to the show.
Hey, great to be here.
Yeah, you seem really excited. And Matthew, you're here as well. Today we've got a cool topic. I'm going to just basically put the title of the episode on the table, which is Let Food Be Thy Medicine. But generally, we're going to be talking about some things that when it comes to preparing food or just how to think about nutrition, things that maybe you haven't considered. So Alex, kick us off with just a little bit about, what kind of drew you, what you're passionate about, and also some of your background.
Yeah. Thanks for that great intro, Kyle. I grew up in a family of vegetarians and vegans. Since I was 8, we all ate kind of plant-based. And I grew up playing soccer, really competitive there. And then, like so many of us, we decided not to go take it to a collegiate level and just immerse yourself in college life. But then you're faced with this fundamental question, like, how do I not gain this freshman 15? Like, I know that I'm not like eating my mom's cooking anymore. I'm responsible for my health. So what am I going to do? And like so many of us washed up jocks, I ended up in the gym doing what we do best. And from that point, like I had already built an amazing physique, and lots of muscle density from soccer, especially in my lower body. So I was like trying to build the upper body. And from that point, I wanted to hire a coach just to really nail down the nutrition aspect. I felt like I had training dialed in and just wanted to go that extra mile, especially like when you're trying to lose weight or optimize for muscle gain. You're thinking like protein is all that matters. Like carbs and fats, like they're important too, but like which one do you prioritize? And the second that I hired that coach, things just like got 0 to 100 really quick. I got very, very lean, started putting on muscle like crazy, and I jumped in a bodybuilding show, won my first show that qualified me for nationals, went to nationals, got first runner-up overall, and turned pro. It was like night and day, like thrust into a professional sport. And from that point, I knew that my physique was already there to be competitive. So I just kept going. I did like a slew of shows. I think it was like up to like 8. And if my health hadn't become an issue, it would have been harder for me to step away because I am so competitive and I am really disciplined. And it didn't really seem like an issue with fitness or nutrition. Like both things felt very easy. I never had any like serious side effects or symptoms that were saying something was going wrong. But little did I know it, I ended up in the hospital with mental health issues and severe thyroid dysfunction that was in full-blown autoimmunity. So that gives you the title of Hashimoto's thyroiditis. Hashimoto's thyroiditis. Got to make sure I say it all clearly. And from that point, like, especially when I was in that bodybuilding trajectory, I was learning so much about nutrition at this time. Like, not only was I implementing like certain foods, and I was asking questions to my coaches, which are a really great resource to try and get a foundational knowledge of nutrition and aesthetics and like biooptimization. But at that time, I was just crushing books. I was into audiobooks, into the podcast. So I was feeding my mind too. And I was feeling empowered about each food that I was putting in my body and always asking questions like, why are we doing this food? Like, what is the component of like having a slow digesting carb versus a quick digesting carb? And when would you implement them for optimizing your lifts and so on? So when the health issue came up, I already had a foundational knowledge of like, food is really amazing. And not only is it building your mind and helping you live a really long time and thinking sharp, but it does play a difference in your aesthetics, but also just like the way your body functions. And the fact that food had failed me at that point, especially that I didn't have any like precursors telling me like, hey, you need to slow down before something bad happens. It just went from I was feeling good, boom, like everything went south. And then you're faced with doctors trying to give you a Band-Aid prescription on, a Band-Aid prescription that say, like, I'm so sorry, that here, let's give you a pill to nullify the symptoms and not get to the root cause. Like Western doctors aren't really privy to that. That's where functional medicine comes in. That's where nutrition comes in. That's where more of these counter culture medicine practitioners come in, whether it's like energy healers, whether it's somebody that is taught in a foundational way in a university, or somebody that just like knows their stuff and gets results. So then I just started engaging with all of this information, all this education, and speaking to different practitioners. And that's what's gotten me here today, out of autoimmunity, like really truly thriving. But at the same point, like so many of us, I'm not perfect. I definitely have like health issues still that I want to get better. But I have been able to undo a lot of the damage, and I have a whole new perspective on fitness that's more about like engaging in the parasympathetic state, like really taking stress into account, making sure that you're in tune with your body's needs and you're not just overkilling it on discipline and eating with a prescription. Like, I'm going to eat these foods cyclically. I'm going to eat like tilapia, asparagus, rice 5 times a day, constantly feeding yourself. And then by the end of the day, you're going to bed hungry and you're like, but I ate all my food. So like, what's going on? There's definitely a disconnect. You need to like, especially when you're putting so much attention on macros in order to get you the physical result. When you like what you look in the mirror, it's going to keep you motivated to eating that way rather than getting in touch with like, like I'm at a certain point in my period, a certain point in my cycle, and I need more fat, but I'm just like conditioned to eating this certain way. So I'm not paying attention to my higher intelligence. That's my body saying like, avocado looks like unbelievable right now, but I'm going to deny myself that natural food for some arbitrary reason because I'm looking in the mirror and I like that I see shredded abs. Like, that's just hypocrisy. So it's all about getting back in touch with your body's cues and then knowing what foods are innately good for us. And that leads me into the kind of the points that I want to hone in today about my newfound food philosophy. And the first one that I'd love to cover is processed.
Let's slow down here and just like really just
Sorry.
say thank you, first of all, because that's such a fantastic and like whole intro. Matthew, do you have any questions? Like I want to like ask you a few before we get into that next.
Yeah, same. I know. I was just letting it go because I mean everything that was coming out of your mouth was like so awesome and just insightful and impactful, and so I was just letting it all sink in. But I had a ton of questions along the way as well and I know we're going in the right direction because I know we're going to get to. I think you have like 5 or 6 really bulleted listed points that we're going to talk about. But one of the things that stood out to me early on when you started talking was it sounds like there was a pretty fundamental shift that happened when you met that first coach who really took you from a health conscious, very athletic individual. And I feel like a lot of us can probably relate to that. And then, having that person who comes in and gives you a few little things to pay attention to or change up, that really helps elevate you and get to that next level. So I'm kind of curious, what was kind of the major things that were changed at that point, or just like new things that were implemented into your routines or workouts or diet, but just in kind of like why you think that those changes made such a significant difference in your the way that you looked, but also the way that you felt.
I think it was just about understanding the macro ratios and knowing that you can't just only eat protein and think that you're going to look great. Protein is not an energy source. It does help you build muscle, but it's not going to necessarily fuel you in a workout. It's going to like rebuild those tissues, but you need carbs and fats as energy sources. So then it comes down to figuring out like what is the right ratio that works for you. Some people are more like fat adapted, some people are more carb adapted, and then it really comes down to a happy median. I know that if you were to use like one of the free macro tracking apps like MyFitnessPal, the automatic ratio that it spits out is wanting you to eat around 50% of your calories from carbs, 20% from protein, 30% from fat, or 30% from protein, 20% from fat. It's kind of up to you. But then you can play around with that. You could go 33, 33, 33 if you wanted. But protein is the most thermogenic macronutrient, so you're going to be burning more calories when you eat protein as compared to carbs or fat. So there is more of a metabolic benefit to eating more protein, but it's not an energy source, and you need something to shuttle blood and ATP into your muscles during the workout. And then it comes down to like, all right, well, we have X amount of carb sources to play with. So we want to use ones that are going to break down quickly before a workout, as opposed to one that's a slow digesting carb like brown rice versus white rice, which is going to go straight and it's going to be broken down a lot easier. Brown rice you probably want to use after for the slow digesting benefit. So it was just truly playing around with those ratios that really like woke me up to, wow, I can really create the body that I want to live in. And I'm not going to be bumbling around just taking a stab in the dark on what I think is right, which I think so many of us kind of do until you really embrace macros and then find something that works for you. But then the downside of that is like, now you're eating a very limited diet. It's not a diverse range of foods. I mean, if I said like, hey, like I don't want to eat this one, all right, we'll do something else. But it's not like you're eating a different diet every single day, because a big component of bodybuilding is that consistency. And that's where I think it goes too far.
So what went wrong then? Like I'm hearing a bunch of positive outcomes from really dialing in on your macros, and like full disclosure, you're talking about kind of like another level of nutrition that I've never delved into. Like tracking macros, even tracking calories for me is like, I've never had to, but I feel like as I'm getting into my later 20s and I want to continue to be an athlete into my older age, like this is an area that I want to learn more about. So I'm super interested to hear more like, yeah, like what do you think led to the thyroid issues? Was it unrelated to the changes in the macro ratios? Was it specific foods? Was it the combination? And maybe a little bit about like the connection on the mental health stuff as well. I know it's a secondary question, but what relationship does the mental health have with your nutrition, with how you move, with how you operate?
Man, that's like a really big and loaded question, because it's like a lot of it I'm still like trying to sort out. How did this happen? Like on the outside looking in, I am just like a pillar of health. Just even back then, like I was constantly seeking out the right nutrition knowledge. It wasn't just like doing whatever somebody told me to do. I was asking why consistently, yet I still ended up in a diseased state. So like, why? And it sucked. I mean, to be told like, hey, you can't do what you've been doing that got you all this success, for what reason? And a doctor's not going to look into the root cause. And they didn't even want to ask about my lifestyle. They didn't want to ask about the crazy extreme that bodybuilding takes you to. I will preface that I never took any like hard drugs or anything like that. It was solely through diet. I mean, I did take some supplements, but nothing too crazy, like nothing out of the ordinary. In terms of thyroid, two of the biggest components that go into optimal thyroid health are selenium and iodine. And there's mixed, I mean, selenium, everybody can agree that it's like really needed. And it's also not widely available in our diet. Some really great sources of selenium are like fish, oysters, Brazil nuts are awesome. And then in terms of iodine, we like look at salt. A lot of the time salt is now laced with iodized salt. But that's not like the most natural source of it. And so a lot of nutritionists, functional medicine doctors will say, like, let's incorporate types of seaweed like kelp, or like even the sushi sheets, like nori, just like eat 2 sheets of that every day. That'll get you your iodine. Don't worry about it. But then there's like other doctors that are saying like, we have too much iodine in our Western diet now, because we're putting it in because we were seeing it as a problem. So now you could be getting like hidden iodine everywhere. So if you have too much iodine, well, then it's going to cause a host of other issues. So it's like, well, where do we go? Am I getting enough iodine? I don't know. So, I mean, I still don't know the answer to that. I try and incorporate seaweed and good seafood into my diet. Some Brazil nuts really does the trick for sure. But I'm also just trying to learn too. Like, do I have too much? Like, I'm trying to look deeper into the sources of my food, and where they come from. And a lot of that is going to go into making sure that I'm eating foods that have one ingredient, and that's like whole foods. Whether it's like I'm eating an oyster, I'm making a soup with all the ingredients are literally just like the raw foods, like vegetables, versus getting things that are enriched with a list of vitamins. That's where I start to have some skepticism, and that's one of my principal food beliefs now is making sure you're cutting out processed foods in favor of real whole foods and nutrient dense foods.
Yeah, seriously, you could fill a huge book with all this stuff. It's really fascinating. But one thing I wanted to ask you too, because you did make a comment on the concept of eating intuitively, and I feel like these two journeys that you were kind of on at the same time almost contradict themselves in a lot of ways, right? Because you have to get to this place where you're so focused on your macros and hitting these certain benchmarks every single day. That maybe you do get a little bit further away from really knowing intuitively what your body wants and needs in that current moment. And so I'd like to hear a little bit more about your journey with trying to strike that balance, and if there were any big road bumps along the way, or if just kind of if it was kind of a difficult journey in the first place of like breaking away from one and moving more into this intuitive space that it seems like you're kind of in now.
I would say that, like, because I was vegetarian growing up, I was always really interested in whole foods and just cooking. Like, I remember before I even started bodybuilding, like, I looked pretty good. I didn't have a whole lot of fat to lose, but I just wanted to get smarter and optimize my lifts and how I felt and all that. But at the time, I was just really liking food. I was playing around with different cookbooks and I was having fun in the kitchen, and then shifting to the macro based approach. Now you're meal prepping. Now you're eating tilapia with that yucky fish gel in it because it sits overnight and you're like, oh my God, I don't want to eat this. Or I could just cook every single day the same exact foods. And then that's another added burden, especially as a college student. So that wasn't super fun. So it took the joy out of it. And so much of our culture revolves around food. Like, food is love. Food is an act of service. Food is quality time. It is such an amazing entity to ground us and connect us with this earth and with others and with ourselves. And when I was doing the macro based approach, it really disconnected me from a lot of the things that made me fall in love with food and just a more of a plant based lifestyle. And then I was, like I said, I was reading all these audiobooks, listening to audiobooks, reading these books, listening to podcasts, listening to the experts. And I'm learning about all these different foods that I don't get to incorporate into my diet because of this arbitrary, concrete diet that got me to a place of success. And then, maybe I'm in a supermarket and I'm only buying the same exact foods every day. I'm like, this is not fun. And that's why, like, after this health issue happened, like, I think it's the universe telling me, like, this is out of alignment and you need to embrace the knowledge that you've acquired up until this point and start activating it, like employing it in your everyday, experimenting with different foods and see what you can really do. And now I'm in a place where I have so much macro based knowledge that I really don't need to count. I just kind of understand the purpose of proteins, fats, carbohydrates, and like when do I want to incorporate certain carbs. Like looking at potatoes, which are a starchy carb, versus non-starchy carbs like greens. I don't know. That's probably a really terrible example, but like celery, asparagus, like these are things that are not starchy. And so they're going to be broken down differently. And then just using principles of moderation. Same with fats. Like, there are processed fats and like that are really bad for you, like corn oil and vegetable oil versus extra virgin olive oil and avocado oil. Like, learning those differences and being able to experiment and feel empowered in every single choice that I make is the greatest gift that I would want to bestow upon anyone, and our conventional knowledge and what's put into media and proliferated by people that we trust in Western doctors. A lot of it favors people with a lot to gain and a lot of funding, and it's not benefiting like a small ethical farmer who's producing really good for you food in a way that's sustainable to the environment and also for our wallets. Those people aren't getting the spotlight that they deserve, and taking more of an intuitive based food approach, I've been able to use all of this knowledge and be able to vote with my dollar and vote with my fork rather than just by what I see in the mirror telling me to eat in a cyclical fashion.
Heck yeah. The only thing I want to say is I think a lot of people fall in this category where they have some health issue. It happened to me with knee and hip and like joint inflammation and pain a couple years ago. I've talked about it a number of times, but I went through the process of getting blood tests done with a naturopathic doctor and found out which foods were causing inflammation more than others, eliminated those from my diet, and fundamentally like changed my life. Like I know like the pain went away, and I learned like firsthand, even though I thought I was eating healthy, I was eating a ton of bread. I was eating a lot of carbs, not really like I was, anyways, a lot of people fall in this category where they don't know quite what's going on that's led to the health issue, whatever that health issue might be. And it's so intimidating and overwhelming to be like, shit, like, what do I do? So to hear you be like, I still haven't figured it out, but that's okay. You are, I think the way you wrapped up that last message of just feeling empowered about the decisions you're making, like, even if it's not the perfect food, you're experimenting, you're testing, and like the intention of trying to improve through what you put in your body, you're naturally going to start to pay more attention to how do I feel when I eat this way? Like if I eat breakfast at 9 a.m. versus 10 a.m. or how big of a breakfast, like just play with that stuff on your own is almost just as valuable as like listening to the best episodes of the Joe Rogan podcast to find the top doctors and scientists who are going to tell you like, this is the exact stuff to eat. So I love your message, and I'm excited to hear these 5 bullet points that you've got. Matthew, anything else you want to add in?
No, I'd just like to echo what you said. And yeah, I'm stoked for these bullet points. Let's get tactical with the people here.
Yeah, okay.
And yeah, first thing I'll say is like the reason I wanted like to specifically when you told me about the stuff around extra virgin olive oil versus olive oil and virgin olive oil, like I didn't even know what the difference was between any of those. Maybe everyone here listening already understands the difference, but I thought that was fascinating. So Alex, share some other stuff that we might not know about.
All right. I'd say that the first one is processed versus unprocessed foods, just as like my principles that I want to live by in this philosophy. Like just not wanting to burden your body with all these other chemicals that are used to create like dense dead foods. Like food has living intelligence. It comes out of the ground with its own agenda, its own little emotions, its own like living ecosystem inside of itself. And personally, I want to become that. I want that innate intelligence to become me. I don't want to have like something that was made in a lab with no innate intelligence, with all of these other chemicals added to it, in a way that is marketed to people that are really vulnerable in their health. And I want to have full control. I would say that that's what bodybuilding taught me a lot of, is like we are in the driver's seat of our health and our body is the way that we look, think, and feel. And by leaning on food that isn't giving you a higher power, another critical edge, especially since like whole based foods have been used for thousands of years, yet all these processed foods that we're inundated with in our society are just, they're dead, they're processed, they're not good for you. So that's like my number one principle. If you're trying to up level your health game right away, it's looking in your kitchen and seeing your kitchen as your environment, and you're the product of your environment. And if you have these bad foods laying around, like whether or not you're going out of your way to use them, they will end up in your food. So if you use like extra virgin olive oil versus vegetable oil, which is highly, highly processed, you're going to have a better result. So it's just like really basic food principle for if you're going to go the intuitive approach. Any thoughts on that?
I guess just maybe the main difference, like what is it that is extra virgin olive oil? Is it just exactly what it is? I mean, I guess you look at you look at things in the grocery store and you want them to be just exactly what they say that they are. But like, what is it that makes like vegetable oil so dangerous, I suppose, versus extra virgin olive oil?
Okay, well, there's three main types of fat that we want to look at, and that's saturated fat, monounsaturated fat, and polyunsaturated fat. Basically, polyunsaturated fat is going to be more unstable and more prone to oxidation. And oxidation is basically like rusting. Like if you eat an apple and you put it in your fridge and then you come back an hour later and it's brown, that's oxidation. So polyunsaturated fats are more prone to oxidation. And it's we don't want that in our body. And monounsaturated fat is better for you, and it is less prone to oxidation. It is more stable, and then saturated fat is the most stable. Um, some some examples of saturated fats that are muy bueno would be coconut oil and ghee, for instance, or even regular butter. Like it doesn't have to be clarified butter, which is what ghee is. Some of the golden childs of monounsaturated fat would be avocado oil and extra virgin olive oil. But some of the differences here is between extra virgin, virgin, and olive oil is just like their smoke point and at what point do they oxidize. So, preparing for this interview podcast, you look at 10 different sources about this issue with extra virgin olive oil. Can I cook with it? And you're going to get 10 different answers. But a large part of the evidence is going to say that olive oil in general will have smoke points from like 200 to 410. So that's a really wide range of potential oxidation chances. The What I like to live by in terms of extra virgin is it is at a foundational level. It is literally squeezing an olive oil and what come an olive, and then the oil comes out of it. If you want to do virgin or regular olive oil, it's processed with machines in another way, and it's going to become more refined and more processed. But the benefit of that is you're going to be able to cook with it at higher temperatures. You could technically fry things in it. You can leave it in the pan for longer. But anything that becomes denatured with heat is going to be prone to oxidation. And that has a bunch of like carcinogenic side effects.
Gotcha. I typically try to stick to the coconut oil when I'm cooking, so I'm happy to hear that I'm in the clear there.
I cook with extra virgin olive oil religiously. So when Alex came over for dinner last week, she was like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "Oh God, like, how did I not know this?"
Well, that's when I would argue avocado oil is amazing because it's still in monounsaturated fat, which is the golden child of fats. And in my opinion, it has the least amount of skepticism around it. Mono is great. Saturated fat, there's still like mixed evidence, and polyunsaturated fat more prone to oxidation. So probably want to limit those. Probably want to limit saturated fats, but not exclude them. Monounsaturated, awesome. Avocado oil is going to have a higher smoke point and oxidation level. So you're going to be able to cook with it at higher temperatures and for longer. If you're cooking with olive oil at a low temperature, fair game, but know that you can't heat it up too high. Like the sweet spot would probably be the upper limit of 350, 325 to 350 is probably like, so low medium heat is fine. But if you're leaving like a lot of extra virgin olive oil on the pan for an extended period of time, well, that's just going to creep up and it's going to be more prone to oxidation. So I would leave extra virgin olive oil in the realms of like dipping bread in it, using it as a salad dressing, keeping it at room temperature because that's how it's supposed to be enjoyed. Also, if it becomes oxidized, it's going to change the flavor profile. So if you love the taste of olive oil, eat it at room temperature. That's where you're going to get the most bang for your buck. And all avocado oil, for instance, is more of a neutral flavor. So if you're just trying to cook with something, so it's like a conduit to help get things sauteed, avocado oil is going to be your golden child.
Golden child. All right, number 2.
I would say looking at the color of your food. If you're like, take salmon for instance, a farm raised salmon versus a sockeye salmon. One is significantly lighter and one is more pigmented. Compare that with like iceberg lettuce versus arugula. One is more pigmented. That color is communicating the nutrient density inside. So pick foods that speak to you. Like pick foods that are beautiful. Like we are wired at a caveman level to seek out things that are speaking to us on like a cellular level. So go for the more pigmented foods. That's it's clean and
I
simple.
love that. Some fruits too are just like the most beautiful things I've ever seen, especially when you look inside of them at like the seeds and how they sprout and all this stuff. So I think that's nature's way of just being like, hey man, come eat this stuff. Like this is what will help you live. So that's a good one. I like that. Okay, what's next?
I would also just like piggyback on the back of that really quick. The darker foods like arugula or blueberries or red cabbage, like they're going to be really high amounts of antioxidants and polyphenols. Polyphenols are the antioxidant compound that are in like dark pigments, and they have a bunch of amazing anti-cancer effects. So dark purple, blue, red, green are going to be like super sweet spot, but it doesn't mean disclude like mangoes or dragon fruits or anything else because like those are also communicating other amazing nutrients. But my favorites are the really dark ones. Third one would be the principle of fasting. Like we are conditioned to be eating all the time. And a lot of the marketing that we're faced around is like, there's so much food, you can get it for really cheap. Like we need to go from a small Coke from back in the 1950s. And now we've got like triple big gulps. Like we need more calories. We need to be eating all the time. Like we really don't. Like if we're to the point where we have so many stored calories on our body all the time, like why are we prone to just eating more if you can tap into that and use it for fuel? Also, when you're not eating, there's a lot of other good things that happen. Like digestion takes priority. So if you're constantly digesting food, your body is going to be putting all of its time, attention, and blood into your gut, stomach to break it down and use it for energy and allocate it throughout the body. But if you're fasting and you just wait a little bit longer, well, now you're giving your gut a break and you're allowing your body to do other things. So if you've got like some inflammation in your knee, Kyle, or like an old injury lagging, like know that your body is able to send more energy and attention to that injury than if you were eating and snacking all day, every day. So not only are you having a gut benefit because you're giving it a break, you're getting a cognitive benefit because you're getting more attention up to your brain. But then you're also getting the fat burning benefit because like if you are constantly eating more food, your body's going to be using that as immediate source of energy. But if you give it a break, it's going to eat up your glycogen stores, and then it's going to start to tap into your fat stores for energy. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you need to eat less calories overall. It just means by condensing it into a smaller window, you're giving your body a break to do other things. So that's kind of the principle of biohacking is like
Yeah.
get more out with less input.
Yeah, one of the things that really drew me to that in the first place as well too was kind of like seeing it made me understand better how certain foods really affected my body because I felt like I could actually look at my body as like okay, this is like the base level, right? Because if you're fasted and if you've been fasted for a while, that's kind of like you said, your body's not burning calories anymore. It's like it's burning its fat. So then whenever you do eat again, you have a direct experience with how that food makes your body feel. And so I feel like it's just kind of in the same journey as what you're talking about. It's just like once you start to incorporate these little things, you gain this deeper understanding and it makes you want to keep going on that journey to find out exactly what intuitive eating looks like for you to be the healthiest, happiest version of yourself.
Yeah. And I mean, like to be intuitive, like you have to be in tune. And if you are conditioned by society to be eating the second that you wake up until the moment that you go to sleep. Why you're not in touch with your stomach and your intuition. Like sometimes I'm not hungry because maybe I had like a really big epic meal with friends one night and then the next morning I'm not really hungry. But if I listen to like our societal conditioning, I would just be getting up and eating anyways. And I wouldn't be paying attention to like, what do I feel called to eat? Is it something that's more fat dominant? Is it just some bone broth because I need something to prime my gut with collagen and all this amazingness that's really sensitive to my stomach because it's not feeling so good after that indulgent? Or is it like I didn't eat so much last night and I need some like satiating, slow digesting carbs that ground me in this moment and give me the energy to move on the next day? So by implementing some fasting protocols, like you can really get in touch with, am I hungry? What do I feel like I need to eat in this moment? And do I need to eat in this moment? And being hungry is not necessarily a bad thing. Like we are made to be able to withstand hunger, but we're programmed to escape pain all the time. So food has become a source of safety and comfort and dopamine and all of these other things. And we need to address that habit and get in touch with our intuition, which is the whole premise of intuitive eating.
I remember early in my weightlifting, like I don't lift weights much anymore, but when I was super focused on just putting muscle on, I had literal insecurities about, do I have food with me all the time? I literally, if I went to an afternoon class, like leave my house at 1, come back at 4, I would need like a protein bar, probably more than that, you know. And now it's like it's a real blessing to just kind of be like, oh, like I'm gonna leave the house, I'll eat something at some point. If it's a little later, like the other day, it was like 5 p.m. I hadn't had dinner, but I wanted to work out, so I was like, cool, I'll just eat at 8 instead of 5. And it's like makes zero difference to me because I've trained to have that like flexibility, and I think it's huge downside if you don't have that. And I know what that's like. So yeah, thanks for sharing it, Alex, and really well described what intuitive eating looks like to you. So thank you for that as well.
Don't even get me started about these bodybuilders that wake up at 2 a.m. to like slam protein.
Yeah.
Is this necessary? Now you're eating like 20, 22 hours a day. Like you're never giving your body a break because you're just inundating it with stuff to do.
Right. And
Than
what
like,
works for you today might not work for you in 6 months or a year or whatever. Like, yeah, maybe it is good one time or for a couple weeks to wake up at 2 a.m. and eat, but then don't do that every day forever. Like try it once, see how you feel. But yeah, that's crazy shit. Not for me. Sleep as well. Like something I've learned is not to go to sleep, not to eat or drink before I go to sleep. I'll drink some water before I go to sleep, but I don't eat right before I go to sleep anymore.
I agree with you, but I'm such a nighttime eater. Like, because I'm fasting
It's
like
so
all day.
hard. Yeah, that's when I want to snack the most, but I know that's like the worst time to do it too.
Brush your teeth.
I know. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, to be fair, like there is some degree of like knowledge out there that says like by having carbs before bed, you sleep better.
Mm.
So maybe I've taken that principle and ran with it a little bit.
I do have a great workout the next morning too. After I eat like a dinner that's very carb heavy, I sleep great, and then I have a really good workout the next morning too. So
I
maybe
just
there's
don't want
something
to
to
eat
that.
too much. Like I'll sometimes just gorge before bed, and then I'll be laying in bed like feeling like a gut bomb, and I'm like, okay, that was bad. So, but yeah, having like what you guys eat, really clean and healthy, unlike me, that it's probably fine to eat before bed.
Well,
All
the
right.
side effect is like fiber's hard to digest, right? So, like me, I eat so many plants, so I'm pounding food at night, and then I just need to make sure I'm sitting upright, and then I give myself at least 2 hours to break down some of that food before laying down. You don't want it coming back upstream.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, 2 hours. That's more like I'm saying an hour. Like give yourself at least an hour. That's probably my cutoff.
Eat, read a book, sit upright, then go to bed, and it's fine. But to be fair, like I know I shouldn't be eating so much before bed, but I do it anyways, and I want everybody to know that I'm not perfect.
Yeah, I like that message as well. Let's keep moving through this. I feel like Alex should be a staple on the show. We're 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 stoked to have you, Alex. So yeah, share with us number 4.
The next one would just be, since I'm a pescatarian, now I do eat fish, but predominantly plant based. It'd be paying attention to the size of the fish that you eat. Like, there are so many benefits of eating smaller fish, like sardine, herring, anchovies. You got any other ones? I like sardines a lot. They're a really great source of omega-3s, and they're not going to have as much mercury, and they're usually more sustainable, and you can find them wild. They're very affordable. The issue with the mercury and like other toxins is like, so say a small fish eats some mercury, and then a bigger fish eats that fish, and then he acquires some mercury too. And then a bigger fish up on a food chain eats that fish that ate that fish. So the mercury just like proliferates in these really, really big fish.
Bioaccumulation.
But that's exactly what I was going to get
One of the
into.
only things I learned in school.
It's pretty important living in Washington, though. But so many of us think like tuna, shrimp, salmon, those are all fair game, really easy ones.
Sorry.
No, you're good. But I have fallen into that trap where those were my favorite foods. Like in bodybuilding, like this could have been one of my downfalls. Is like I was eating so much tuna out of these cans because I didn't have to prepare it. It didn't get the weird fish gel from tilapia, and it was a lean protein. It was all these good things. But if I'm eating like 2 cans a day for every day, it's gonna add up. So if you're gonna eat those larger fish, because I am such a supporter of eating wild, sustainably raised, not sustainably raised because they can't be raised if they're wild, but sustainable principles of eating fish and then going for the wild ones like salmon. There's so many benefits to salmon, but don't be eating like an absurd amount every single day. If you're gonna do that, go for the smaller fish. They're gonna have a lower incidence of mercury toxicity.
I love it. I've never heard someone articulate that. Like just thinking about the size of the fish. It's cool.
Yeah, and the only last one I really had was just the discussion of oil. So that kind of wraps up my 5 main principles. Um, just touching upon the oil front is going back to avoid vegetable corn oil, soybean oil, incorporate healthy oils, and then consider their oxidation and smoke point, like avocado oil versus EVOO.
That's a big one. I feel like that's a good one for people to really take away from this episode too, because that's something that we're using every single day. And it's such a small change to just buy a different type of oil at the store. And I feel like it makes a huge difference. Because, I mean, if you think about how much you're actually ingesting when you're cooking every single day or however often you cook, that's a very small change that can have a huge impact. So I think that's a good one for the people to really take away from this.
There's so much out there on oils, from the bad, highly processed, unsaturated fatty acids, which are nicknamed PUFAs, PUFA, versus MUFAs, unsaturated fatty acids, and then saturated fatty acids. But like even with olive oil, it is amazing for so many reasons, and we don't want to necessarily demonize olive oil. Like, I'm sorry, Kyle, for like shading you for using EVO in your cooking, and I was just like, hey, I learned a cool new fact. I guess we shouldn't be using it at high temperatures. Like,
yeah, and I cook my sweet potatoes at 400, so I've been just giving myself cancer for years. Great.
Well, what you can think about it is like the benefits of EVO kind of like offset some of the negatives.
Thank you.
I'm gonna throw it out that way.
You're in the clear,
there's a
Dave.
high degree of like polarity within the world of cooking and in EVOO because it is so amazing. But some people say that like because it's predominantly a monounsaturated fat, that it is more of a resilient chemical breakdown, so it can withstand higher temperatures. But I would just operate on the side of safety, considering there's a lot of skepticism, and just go with the avocado oil because we know it has a higher smoke point slash won't be oxidized as quite as low on the temperatures. And then don't discount oils that are super flavorful, like peanut oil. Peanut oil is delicious and it is very cheap. Extra virgin olive oil, very expensive, especially if you're getting real extra virgin olive oil. It should come in a dark glass bottle. That's one way you'll know if it's real. And it should not be below $10. If it's below $10, you can kind of bet that it's not extra virgin olive oil. So it's probably processed. And then go for cheap peanut oil. If you're cooking like a Thai dish, it's going to have a really high smoke point and it's going to taste delicious.
Grocery outlet, bargain market, baby.
Yeah, that's a good one.
I just go buy like 5 massive olive oil things there, and then I never have to worry about it because it is expensive if you buy it at like a normal grocery store.
Yeah.
Well, then I would do a larger deep dive into where is it coming from, that brand, what is on the ingredient label, is it cold pressed? Like we want to make sure that it's cold pressed and not cooked at high temperatures in order to extract the oil. And there's also been a few articles out there saying that there was an obscene amount of olive oils on the market in the US that were not actually extra virgin olive oils and they were just lying to us. So
shocker.
Fuck. Yeah, I'm bragging about going and getting the cheapest olive oil. No, I actually
wrong show for that.
It's good. It's good brands, but relatively close to the expiration date. That's why grocery outlet is cheaper. So yeah. Anyways, I eat that shit so fast. So yeah, Alex, thank you for enlightening me, making me question my health and also my ego. No, I'm kidding. No, but seriously, thank you for coming on the show, sharing some knowledge. You're clearly very passionate about this, and yeah, we're stoked to just see where you continue to grow and evolve as a human being. Is there any place that we could get in contact with you if we're an interested listener who wants to ask a question or just pick your brain?
Yeah, I would say shoot me a DM on Instagram on Alex Berg Fit. That's where I tend to proliferate a lot of my more healthy knowledge. And if you feel so inclined to want to sign up as a nutrition client, you can email me at alexabergfit@gmail.com.
Cool. Very cool. Yeah. I love your content, and especially when it is pushing the boundaries a little bit as far as, I won't say conspiratorial, but when you're like, yo, why is there, X, Y, and Z happening? And yeah, just being real about that stuff as well is always cool. So.
I'm definitely in the game for ruffling feathers these days, especially as I learn more about food policy. It's just getting me really riled up.
Totally.
Our society.
Someone's got to ask the hard questions, right?
At least make people make more informed decisions when they go to the grocery store rather than playing into the labels and the stiff marketing strategies that we're seeing.
I'm on
Cheers to that. Yeah. Thank you so much, Alexa, for the absolute plethora of knowledge that you just dropped on all of us. And we look forward to keeping in touch with you. And
Me too.